There is no reason in the world why the San Francisco 49ers shouldn't kick the hell out of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Will they? And what does it mean for the rest of the season? We'll talk about all of it on today's Gold Standard podcast. What is good, everybody? Welcome to the Gold Standard podcast on the Gold Standard and the Fans First Sports Networks. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. He is Levin Black. It is Thursday. Levin, are you ready to kick some Buccaneer ass?
I'm ready for the 49ers to play again after a week off. I hate bye weeks.
It feels like forever, doesn't it? Kyle Shanahan spoke yesterday. I was like, oh, yeah. I forgot that this is what happens when your team actually plays. It was nice to see.
I'm a little nervous about the East Coast trip.
I don't care about all that, man.
I know you don't, but it is a real thing that statistically is a huge swing.
No, I know, but like, be a grown-up organization. You can't, there's no more excuses. You've burned through it was a road game. Oh, it was an early body clock game. You gacked up games to the Cardinals and Rams. So now you don't get those excuses anymore. That's just the reality of where they are.
Well, I know. I'm talking about reality, not excuses. The reality is it's not so simple of a game.
They kicked their ass when they had Mike Evans and Chris Conley. They should be able to kick their ass without Mike Evans.
They should. Yes, they should absolutely win this game. But there is a little bit of a thing there that does cause teams to be off.
Stop turning the damn football over is the biggest thing. Obviously, the next biggest thing is the return of Christian McCaffrey. Kyle Shanahan spoke yesterday. He was very, very coy. Basically, here's what we learned from Kyle Shanahan. Either Christian McCaffrey is going to play in the game or he won't. And if he plays in the game, he's either going to have his regular workload or he won't.
He's going to have his regular workload.
I would agree with you.
I think Kyle is somebody that if you're good enough to play, you're good enough to play every play if I want you to.
And you know who else agrees with you? Richard Sherman. On his podcast, here's what Richard Sherman said, quote, I heard it from the horse's mouth. He feels really good, and he felt like he could have probably played last week, but they wanted to be overly cautious and just give him more weeks of practice and more time to work that thing out to feel comfortable and feel confident, and he does. All signs point to him playing and probably a significant role in this game. If that is true, and if he does, the Niners are going to kick their ass. That's just it.
It's like you said, they have no margin for error. So saving him at all at this point doesn't make sense. You have to be all in at this point. If he ends up getting hurt again, guess what? Your season was going to be over anyways. So it doesn't matter. Like, you don't want to say it doesn't matter that somebody got hurt. You know, I'm not saying that personally to Christian McCaffrey, but that's the reality of the situation. If he gets hurt again, this team has 0.0% chance of doing what they set out to do, which is win a Super Bowl. They could still make the playoffs, but the season would be essentially over for what I think all of us are at this point wanting. It's Super Bowl or bust pretty much every year.
Waltony101 on Twitch says 2 minutes in and the wet blanket is already out and considerably wet. Yep, human wet blanket Levin Black is in rare form already. I think he's going to play. And, you know, some people are going to say, like, you know, give him 5-10 carries. And I get that. I really do. And there are days where I feel like that. But there are also days like, look, if his Achilles are going to tear, they're going to tear. You can't like baby it. So you either play him and see if it happens, or like you can't live in this sort of purgatory. Like I said, I vacillate on that depending on the day. And I know what people are going to say. If Christian McCaffrey gets hurt, it's all going to be Kyle's fault and he overused him. And, you know, that's going to be the storyline. I think it might be just either they can hold up or they can't kind of situation.
I would like to see him not used like he has been the last year and a half. It is, to me, Jordan Mason is a good enough runner that you use Christian McCaffrey a majority of the time, but Jordan Mason should not be this mop-up person where he maybe gets 5 carries up if they're up big in the fourth quarter. That's what he was in the past. He only played when Christian McCaffrey absolutely couldn't play that next play because either he was completely gassed or he was dinged up and needed to get checked out. I want to see Jordan Mason still getting like 5 to 7 carries a game, keep Christian McCaffrey in that like 12 to 15 carries a game. He's still going to have receptions. He's still probably going to get 20 touches a game with the receptions, but I don't want to see 25, 30 touches. There's no reason you can't give Jordan Mason some carries on a 2nd and 3 or even 1st and 10s. Like, keep Christian McCaffrey a little fresher.
You don't want to see the Cowboys rushing game plan, right? Where they blew out the Cowboys last year and Jordan Mason got a bunch of carries, ended up getting a touchdown in that game. That's what Levin is looking for. Heineman on Twitch says, Kyle, handshake emoji, Ivan Drago. If he does, he does. Well done. That's why I like the Twitch fam. I always like the Twitch fam comments. Last year when they played the Buccaneers, or not last year, 2022, when they played the Buccaneers, Christian McCaffrey had 14 carries in the game. Jordan Mason had 11. So I think that would make everybody pretty satisfied. The Niners ran the ball almost 40 times in that game when they beat the hell out of Tom Brady and the Bucs.
Yeah, I just want to see Jordan Mason not become a complete afterthought. Keep developing him. You know, to me, if you get to mop-up duty, maybe that's where you get Garindo and try to develop him since he is a rookie. But there should be a mix of Jordan Mason still in the game plan. It should not be all Christian McCaffrey.
And I think Garindo, you can sprinkle Garindo in there too. Doesn't have, Jordan Mason, I feel like, is maybe slowing down a little bit. And maybe you make Garindo RB2 this week and, sort of rest Mason a little bit. Would you be opposed to that?
He just had a bye week. So if he's still doesn't have fresh legs, then Jordan Mason has a problem and he can't hold up in the NFL.
I think he was not expecting to carry the load. Remember that what he said after the first week? Like, how the hell does Christian McCaffrey do this? I don't blame him. It's pretty amazing. We got a super chat here that I want to get to. Dark Knight says, in a scenario where Purdy reverts to 2023 with CMC back, do we still feel comfortable paying him? CMC is an aging running back. Look, I'm never going to look at it as a problem, I'm never going to look at it like a problem if all of a sudden, hey, our quarterback's playing really good again. Like, I'm not worried about that. I don't have to worry about Brock Purdy's contract for a long time. I'm worried about the Buccaneers this week. That's really where, I get it. We want to look ahead, but they don't have to make that decision right now. So if CMC comes back and Purdy starts playing well, we don't have to decide right now during the middle of this, okay, here's $60 million a year. Just enjoy the playing well part of it.
If Purdy has the issues that he's had, you'll still be able to tell, even if he's putting up good numbers. His problem, to me, one, I think it's a little overstated how bad he's been. He's had a couple really bad games, but overall this season, there's a reason why he's like 5th. I'm not a huge PFF guy, but there's a reason why in EPA, in PFF, all the different metrics, he is in the top, I think, 7 in all of the big ones, most common ones. So he's not having a horrible season. He's just not having as good as he should. And his touchdown to interception ratio is heavily skewed because they're not finishing red zone drives, which is, yes, a negative. That's part of it. But what he's doing is he's passing up gimmies. He's passing up the 5-yard, 10-yard throws because he's stubbornly trying to get the home run every single play. So if he's still doing that, you'll be able to tell because you're going to be able to notice it even more because it's going to be Christian McCaffrey that he's ignoring. Now, if he suddenly starts going to Christian McCaffrey and dumping it off, all you got to do is say, see, do that even when he's not in the game. Just because it's not Christian McCaffrey doesn't mean you pass up on a Garindo or a Jordan Mason being wide open for 5 yards. Take the 5 yards and have a 3rd and 3.
It's frustrating because the thing that we really liked about Brock was that he did get doubles over singles. But you don't have to hit a double every time. And I think that is sort of the maturation that's going to come with Brock Purdy, is knowing when to press the issue and when that's not needed, right? And that's a difficult thing for a lot of quarterbacks, particularly for quarterbacks that usually have been able to hit those doubles, even when they have to kind of force it a little bit. And Brock, at Iowa State, he had to force it a lot of bit. So, he's got to learn when to pick and choose his spots with that. And I think that becomes a lot easier when, like you said, the guy that he's checking it down to is Christian McCaffrey, who can still end up at second base, even though you didn't hit a double, I don't want to continue the baseball analogy, but you know what I mean? Like a 3-yard pass to Christian McCaffrey could end up being that 20-yard gain that you were thinking about forcing.
I was going to go even deeper into the baseball. This is not baseball, because in baseball, what have you seen? They pass up the single to go for the home run every time. Launch angle took over baseball. And they have a 230 batting average that in the past would have gotten you benched. But now, if you're hitting 30 home runs, you're actually having a bigger effect than the guy that hits 300 and only hits 10 home runs. You're doing more positive, but this is not baseball. Baseball is all about the home run. If you hit a home run 1 out of 3 at bats, that's massively valuable because you got to run at least one to come through. Football is about consistency. You got to be consistent. Even if you're hitting that home run 1 out of 3 drives, if you have 2, 3 and outs, your defense is at a massive disadvantage and it will have a negative impact on the game. It's the whole Mike Martz thing. If you remember Mike Martz, those of us who are older, he was an offensive coordinator for us at one point. And that offense, all they tried to do was throw it deep, throw it deep, throw it deep. And every once in a while, it would work. It's like the Madden offense. It would work every so often. So they would have a bunch of yards. They would get 300 plus yards, but they wouldn't have a ton of points. And the consistency was so poor that they had so many quick 3 and outs that the defense got toasted because they would wear down by the end of the game. And people that played under Mike Martz, like JT O'Sullivan, has talked about that did have an effect on the defense. And I think it's JT O'Sullivan that even said the defensive players, when he was with the 49ers, would get mad at Martz for continuing to do that and not adjusting.
Oh, Mike Martz, the man who became the offensive coordinator of the 49ers and ignored Vernon Davis. That was a thing that happened to those of us that are old enough to remember. Michelle did some digging for me this week, Grant, Levin.
How dare you?
I know. Did you hear my show with Grant? That's what I was thinking of.
I did not, no.
Okay, so I went over a lot of what Michelle dug up on that show, but I want to say it again because it's crazy here. And it points to just a tiny improvement from this offense. Like, Christian McCaffrey doesn't even need to be Christian McCaffrey. He just needs to improve the offense slightly, and they're going to start crushing people. And here's my evidence to back this up. And again, Michelle dug this up for us. There are 8 teams right now that are averaging 26 or more points a game. 7 of those 8 have a combined red zone touchdown percentage of 65%. The other team of those 8 is the 49ers. Do you know their red zone touchdown percentage?
32?
48.6.
Oh, even better than I thought.
So the Niners are scoring on so much less of their red zone drives and still putting up 26 points a game. If they even improve that red zone percentage just a little, they're going to be scoring 32, 35 points a game.
Yeah, I mean, if you put it in actual terms, let's say they only go to 60%, which is still below that average. That's a boost of 12%. If you have, let's say, 3 red zone drives a game, or I guess 2 red zone drives a game that don't end in touchdowns, but instead of field goals, and now you're converting 12% of those more into touchdowns, you're looking at more than a point per game just in that small of a difference. It's over a point per game, just improving by 12%.
And that's if Christian McCaffrey only makes them a little bit better.
Yeah.
If he makes them anywhere close to the offense they were last year, they're going to start rolling it up. And I don't think people realize how good the Niners offense has been this year. The only team that puts up more yards per game than the Niners are the Ravens. That's it. The Niners put up more yards per game than any team in the NFC. The Lions, who are really good. The Commanders offense, that's been really good. Nope. Still San Francisco more. So if you want to buy in to all the hope, right? And the Kyle Shanahan after the bye, and the Niners always make this run and all that stuff, there is very clear, credible evidence to back up your claim.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to they've had turnovers at bad times. They don't actually have a ton of turnovers. They're right in the middle of the league in terms of total turnovers on offense, but they've been bad timing. And they've come in bunches. When they've had a game with a turnover, they have multiple turnovers in that game. And then it's the red zone. You know, those are things that to me are easier to correct than just being bad. Because it doesn't mean you're bad. It means you're having singular plays where you're really, really bad. But a large majority of your plays, you're doing good and you're beating the opponent, meaning you should be able to correct those small or limit them more than you have, which then leads to a much better performance overall. But if I'm not mistaken, The 49ers have not had less than 300 yards in a single game this season. So, like, that's why I've been saying, yes, Purdy's numbers, when you look at just the raw numbers, you go, oh, wow, that touchdown interception ratio is terrible. Sure. And you remember a couple bad games because he's had 2 really bad games this season. But overall, he's been doing well. If they just finish those red zone drives, which I know is easier said than done, then you're looking at Purdy having maybe double the touchdowns, depending on if they're rushing or they're passing. But like, that's how many opportunities they have left there. They have left 7 or 8 touchdowns that they have been scoring in seasons past because the red zone has been so bad.
It's so frustrating to watch. It's so frustrating that they could look just like a machine between the tunnels and then completely bogged down when they get to the red zone. Hopefully that gets better this week. I'm really just hoping that Christian McCaffrey can be anywhere close to the Christian McCaffrey, even if it's just in the red zone. Like, that alone will help. And we'll have to see. The other part of this, Levin, is the Buccaneers and what they do on offense. Baker Mayfield has been cooking this year, but he's also missed some practice time this week. Now, he did participate in practice today. I believe he's got a toe injury. They did a walkthrough. He supposedly looked a lot better during the walkthrough, according to the Bucs offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen. So take that for what it's worth. He's playing really well. I thought he looked really good against the Chiefs, which is not an easy thing to do, I should say. Now, I know he doesn't have his top 2 targets, but this has been good Baker Mayfield. So the Niners offense is going to have to get productive because I think Tampa Bay is going to be able to move the ball as well.
Yeah, I feel like Baker has done the rare thing. A former top draft pick who started well, teams adjusted to him, and he played poorly, got dumped by his team, and yet he was able to fix those mistakes and rise to a level that he previously had never reached. It's like I know RG3 had injuries, but RG3 came in, took the league by storm. They adjusted to him, and he was never able to adjust back. Baker has adjusted back on his 3rd team. That is very rare. It's not the same as, say, Sam Darnold, who just always sucked and suddenly got to the point where he's halfway decent. It's Baker was really good when he first joined the league, and then teams started taking things away from him, and it all fell apart to the point that Cleveland moved on, and he got to the Rams, and he learned some things, and then he got to the Bucs, and I would say even when he got to the Bucs, he was playing at a level that was good, but not as good as he is now. He is continuing to improve and fix the problems that he has made in the past.
He's leading the NFL in touchdown passes right now. He has 23 touchdowns. That's more than Lamar Jackson, who's having an incredible, insane, ridiculous season. Now, the difference is Lamar only has 2 interceptions. Baker Mayfield has 9 interceptions, which bodes well for the Niners defense because they have been very good at taking the football away, particularly via the interception. And that's what it may come down to in this game. It may be a bit of a shootout. And when you get those 1 or maybe, hopefully 2 extra possessions, you have to cash in on those. And that is something that I feel like the 49ers have not done a good job of this year, Levin. They can get the turnovers, but it seems like they don't cash in. They don't capitalize on those opportunities. And stuff like that is how you leave the door open for comebacks at the end of games.
Yeah, and I think that plays into the whole Purdy issue. He gets that turnover, and he's like, all right, we got the turnover. Now I'm going to slam the door on him by getting this big play. He's trying too hard. And it is a big thing. They talk about it all the time on the broadcasts that when you get a turnover, that's a good time to take a shot, right? It seems like Purdy comes out and says, oh, we got a turnover. I'm going to take a shot on every single play right now. And it's not working. It's like, no, just come out and run the offense. You don't need to press. If you run the offense, you will end up getting that door closed.
If you're watching on the stream right now, you see the nugget I put up there. 9 of the 49ers' 11 giveaways have come in the second half this year. So not only are they turning the football over, but they're also doing it, again, at the end of these games when teams are trying to come back to steal victory from the jaws of defeat. So you have to cut that down. The other thing that Michelle pointed out to me that is positive in Christian McCaffrey coming back is that basically when he plays, they turn the ball over half as much as when he doesn't play. When he does not play, the 49ers turn it over 1.6 times per game. And when he does, they turn it over 0.8 times per game. So literally a 50% reduction in turnovers when McCaffrey's on the field. that alone will be a huge boost.
Yeah, that's one that I think there is an effect. That might be a little exaggerated due to small sample size and the fact that Christian McCaffrey has missed a bunch of games right when Purdy decided, hey, I'm going to come into this season and be elite all of a sudden and taking his deep shots. That's skewed it a bit, but I do think there is an effect there. And the effect is when Christian McCaffrey's on the field, the defense has to focus on him. And that means more stacked in the box, which opens up passing lanes. And that opens up the Deebo screens that have been non-existent this year. It opens up the other things this offense likes to do. And thus, you're not going to have as many turnovers because it makes it easier everywhere else.
Don't say non-existent. They were there in the Cowboys game. They came back. They rose from the dead like a phoenix. And it was a welcome sight, frankly, because like we have the players that are good at those things. Let's do those easy things to put our guys in the best position to succeed. Waltony 101 says, very hopeful that McCaffrey's presence will open up opportunities for Pearsall, Kittle, etc. Jennings looks like he's going to be coming back too. So that's obviously a very good sign for the 49ers. I think that they miss him. I like, if you have Deebo and Jennings and Pearsall, like I actually feel pretty good about that in terms of the wide receiver core.
Yeah, I mean, it's not bad. That's the advantage of having a really good receiving tight end, and that's the advantage of having two good starting wide receivers. You can lose one, and you still have a better receiving core than a majority of the league. Now, I think Pearsall is the obvious X factor here. Can he be enough of a threat 15 to 25 yards down the field to keep the defense honest? Because yes, you can say Jennings had a lot of deeper catches this season, and he did. But all of those, literally all of them, were jump balls. It wasn't like he just got wide open. It was, I'm throwing it to him because I need this first down, and he went up and got it. And that's a huge advantage, to be able to do that. But that's not necessarily going to stop the defense from covering you the way that they are. It's not going to make the defense back up just because you're winning a jump ball. You need somebody that can make that defense step back, because otherwise they're going to come down, because that means you can take away Deebo easier, and that means you can take away Christian McCaffrey easier. And if you come down, guess what Kyle Shanahan usually responds with that? He keeps Kittle in the block because there's too many people in the box and he's scared.
It does seem like it's easy to get Kyle Shanahan. It's easy to dictate to Kyle Shanahan what he should do. Josh Dubow from the AP says, according to Next Gen Stats, Jordan Mason has faced a stacked box on 35.8% of his carries, highest mark in the NFL. Teams are showing no fear of the 49ers passing game. That's what that tells me, is they're like, yeah, maybe Brock can beat us, but we're going to make him do it. And they did earlier in the year, and to Brock's credit, he did a lot of the times early in the year. We'll see what Kyle decides to do with Christian McCaffrey. If you were the Bucs, so let's say McCaffrey is there, are you going into like, oh my God, Christian McCaffrey's there mode, like maybe you would have last season? Or are you saying, yeah, all right, let's test those Achilles. We're loading the box. Let's see if Christian McCaffrey can still beat us like he might have been able to last year.
All right, I'll respond to that, but real quick on the stacked box that you still have up on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that leads the NFL, but the 49ers have been facing right around 45% the last couple of years with Christian McCaffrey. So it's down considerably from when Christian McCaffrey is on the field. And on top of that, that stacked box is determined at the snap. And one of the things the Niners have been facing this year is, while the box is stacked, when they snap the ball, a lot of those linebackers and safeties are then backpedaling into pass coverage. So it's a little skewed. But in terms of what the Bucs should do, it's 100%. Well, we don't know that they have a deep threat because Pearsall is a huge unknown. So we're going to stack that box. We're going to take away Deebo. We're going to take away Christian McCaffrey. We're going to try to make Kittle stay in the block by showing blitz every single play, and see if Pearsall or Jennings can beat us in the 15-plus yard routes.
That the weird thing to me is, like, when people say the Niners don't have a deep threat, Jacob Cowing is freaking greased lightning, man. Like, let him just get out there and run some deep plays. And I'm not saying like, he's this all pro that they have stashed on their bench, but I think he could do that. He could do that part of it. He's super fast.
Kyle has a major problem as a head coach in that he will not play a wide receiver unless they can be a really good blocker. And that's got to be what's holding Calvin back. Because every time he's on the field, he's getting open. He's running good routes. So it's not the pass catching part of it. It has to be the other part of it. Maybe he's struggling to pick up the playbook. He's not somebody that picks up the playbook super fast. Or maybe he's just not very developed as a run blocker. But to me, I don't give a shit. And that's my problem. Like, do you think everybody is really good at all things before they can hit the field? Do you think Andy Reid would hesitate to play a wide receiver who could just get open consistently, but was garbage at everything else? No, he wouldn't. He would say, all right, I know he's garbage at everything else, but we're still going to have a certain number of plays here for him where we're going to have him early in the reads because we know he's going to win his matchups consistently because he's going to be getting a third and fourth string corner on him. Kyle doesn't do that.
And I don't know what the status of Chris Conley is ultimately going to be. And maybe if Chris Conley can't play, that by default gives Cowing opportunities. But it is very frustrating that, like, all right, guys get hurt, then you play the rookies, and the rookies are pretty good. And you're like, oh, okay, turns out they can play. It's like, maybe don't put yourself in a situation where that has to happen. Like, I really believe the only reason Dominic Pooney's the starter now is not because he's really good. It's because Feliciano and Burford got hurt. That's it. Like, yeah. And then when Pooney played, to his credit, he kicked ass, which is great. Good for you. I'm not trying to discredit any of that, but I don't think he ever sees the light of day or even gets considered for a starting spot unless those guys get hurt. And that's frustrating because I feel like you're not fully taking advantage of what your roster can do.
Would Purdy have gotten a shot?
No,
exactly. Kyle is 100%. Oh, if you're young, you better hope for injuries in front of you. And it's like, no, the way it works is you give young players who are showing something in practice, something. I mean, obviously quarterback is different, so take Purdy out of this. But if they show something in practice, all right, we're going to give him a couple plays. And if he shows something in those couple plays, you go, okay, we're going to give him a handful of plays next week. Oh, he showed something again. All right, we're going to give him, half of the plays this week. Oh, he's still doing good stuff. Okay, now he's a starter. Like, you give them the opportunity. You don't just ignore them completely. And that's the problem. Kyle doesn't believe in development. He believes the only way you develop is in practice. But that's asinine because you're not going to play somebody until they prove it in the games. So you're not giving somebody the opportunity to show it to you because all you're saying is you got to be great in practice. Okay, but even if he's great in practice, you're not giving him any opportunities in the game. It doesn't matter because, oh, well, Jennings is good at practice and Ayuk was good at practice and Deebo was good at practice. So they're not getting the opportunity. You give your young players 1 or 2 plays at least to see what they can do. And that doesn't mean they have to get a reception if they're a wide receiver on those plays. They're going to watch the film. They're going to see how well he did. See whether or not he was able to cross up a corner, whether or not he was able to run an out route or a post and all the different routes. You sprinkle those in, even if they're not high in the pecking order for the reads, so that you can get tape on him in actual games and see what they are. And Kyle doesn't do that at all.
The weird thing is, like, I don't know if maybe he doesn't want to put them on the field until they're like totally ready. And that drives me a little nuts because you might accelerate their development by putting them on the field before they're ready. Now you could hurt it too. I fully acknowledge that. But like, you don't have to wait until a guy is 100% ready to play before you throw him in there. And I think that's what he does sometimes. And I don't know why he thinks like that. I disagree with that thinking. Becca, 49ers Giants Sharks, YouTube channel member for 9 months. Thank you, Becca. We appreciate the support. If you want to become a YouTube channel member, it's less than $3 a month. You get custom emojis. You get membership badges. You get priority comment response. If you sign up for the Good as Gold tier, you get early access to our 49ers in 5 reports as well. Becca says they don't know how to capitalize on momentum. Sometimes they give the momentum right back. How many times have we seen the Niners will get a turnover on downs or a turnover period, and then Brock throws an interception right away? That is the dagger. They did it against the Chiefs. They did it against one other team that I can't remember off the top of my head. It was like immediate. It was like turnover. It just makes you want to pull your hair out. I don't totally buy into momentum, but I do think that there are times when teams are vulnerable. There are times when teams are sort of staggered a little bit, and you could really knock them out.
Momentum is 100% real. Anybody that's played sports at even a high school level knows momentum is a real thing because it breeds confidence, and it's hard to describe because it's not like you're unconfident in other moments, but it's just like you get in the zone. When you have momentum, you hit the zone and things are just happening and everybody kind of comes together and gets on the same page where it's an unspoken thing where you're reacting to them in the way that they expect you to react and vice versa. It's a weird thing that you can't fully put into words, but when you play sports, you can feel it and know that it's a real thing.
Yeah, I don't know if I totally agree with that. I played sports. Momentum can change on any play, right? How many times in a game have we seen one team? How many times this year, 11, have we seen the 49ers have all the momentum and then one play happens and all their momentum is gone? If momentum was a real thing, how then would you be able to take it away from somebody?
Because then it's all about confidence. Like I said, if you have a bad play, it breaks the momentum. But if you go, it's like a snowball effect. The better you're doing, the better you feel, and the better you keep improving. I guess keep taking over. But then one play disrupts that euphoria.
So then
And
it's
breaks
not a
it.
snowball. If it was a snowball, it would the chances of the other team taking the momentum would be less and less and less and less and less. But
Is it not?
No.
When you have the momentum and you're doing well and you keep increasing your lead, does the snowball not grow? That doesn't mean that it's unstoppable, but it's growing. The more you do well, the more confident you get.
Look at that game against Seattle, where the Niners are kicking the hell out of them. George Kittle scores a touchdown. It's 23-3. Niners have all the momentum. Kickoff return gets returned for a touchdown. All of a sudden, whoop, everything stops. Like, if that were the case, that one play could not break all that. I think that momentum is completely overrated. Completely overrated because one team can grab it right back on one play. And that could literally happen one play after another. It could just keep ping-ponging. So I don't know that I totally buy into the momentum thing, but what I will buy into is that the 49ers have let other teams get back in the game way too frequently in the fourth quarter, including the Cowboys in the last game that they actually played. With Baker at quarterback this week, you can't do that, man. Baker will pull it out. I mean, hell, he drove down the field against the Chiefs. They even had a holding penalty early in that drive, and he overcame that. They drove down and stuck it in the end zone against Steve Spagnuolo and that defense, man. And if they had gone for two and made it, they might have won that game if Todd Bowles wasn't a complete marshmallow as a head coach.
Yeah, the 49ers are 100% beating themselves this year. You know, they're not getting knocked down. They are punching themselves in the face, or they're slipping on a banana and hitting the corner of a table. You know, they are beating themselves. And that's the way it is when you're arguably the most talented team. I would say Baltimore has overtaken the 49ers in terms of most talent, but the 49ers are right there. And that means for you to lose, yeah, every once in a while, it's just, that other team just had a perfect game plan. We weren't able to adjust, but that's not what it's been in any of the games this year. It's been the 49ers come out and they crap the bed when the going gets tough. And that's why I've harped on the mental aspect of it. This team, when they get up by double digits, they relax. That is a mental mistake. And at the same time, when the going gets tough and it's, we really got to pull through here, a majority of the time, they haven't because they get down on themselves. The mental aspect is a huge factor in why they're 4-4.
More research from Michelle in the fourth quarter of this year. The 49ers have allowed 8.9 points on average in the fourth quarter. That's the third most. They have allowed 103 yards per game in the fourth quarter. Brock Purdy has 3 picks and 1 touchdown in the fourth quarter. I mean, it's like they go into like a different dimension when the quarter switches to number 4 here. I mean, this is really, really bad. And again, I'm trying to see the positive here. It's almost too bad to continue, right? Doesn't it have to get better by sheer regression?
Yeah, it should regress to the mean. It's whether or not it completely flips, because the 49ers have been the opposite of that in recent years. They have dominated second halves. It's the first half that's kind of they were messing this up, or they were close here, didn't quite get it done. It's 10-7 going into the half, and then they come out in the third quarter. Last year it was all about the third quarter, right? They were on pace to set a record. They ended up not, but they were on pace to set a record halfway through the season for third quarter points.
Mm-hmm.
And that was their MO, was all right, it's close through the first half. We make adjustments. We come out in the third quarter and we blow the doors off of you in the third, and the game's over.
I haven't looked. It's weird. It's like sometimes I just focus in on what the 49ers are doing. I haven't looked at the rest of the games in the week, in week 10. How many potential games are set up for the 49ers? Let's say Washington's playing Pittsburgh. I always look AFC, NFC first. Cowboys, Eagles. The Eagles are going to stomp them. The Jets are playing the Cardinals. The Jets could maybe pull that one out. That would be nice. Be nice if Houston could beat Detroit as well. Miami's playing the yeah, there are a few games, a few things that could break the 49ers way this week schedule-wise.
I'm not at the point of caring about the schedule breaking the 49ers way.
You're not? How could you not be?
Talk to me in the final few weeks of the season.
Yeah,
I want teams to lose that are in front of the 49ers for playoffs, but that's not something I'm sitting and watching. There's way too many games left.
But what happens now affects the situation. That's how we get to the situation you're talking about, right? Like what happens the last couple of weeks depends on what happens now. So I'd rather just have these teams lose now, and then it won't come down to the.
I'd rather. I'm saying, of course you would rather have them lose, but it's not something I'm tracking and watching and really paying attention to. It's still, do you do that in week 1? Do you do that in week 2? When do you start doing that? I'm not at the point that I start really watching. All right, this team is the 6th seed. We need to leapfrog them. I might watch that game and root against them.
The second the 49ers dropped the game to the Rams, that's when I started. Because that's when I realized we're going to need some help in the NFC. So that's when I locked in. Perfect Blackness Senior says, as a football coach myself, I do understand Shanahan on this, but I have found that there are players who develop better in live action than practice. And that's true. Some guys are better in practice than they are in games, and some guys are better in games than they are in practice. And as a coach, I do think it's on you to kind of realize and figure out who's who and which guys are which. And the guys that are better in the games, sometimes you got to give them a shot, even if maybe they haven't quite earned it yet, just to see, because what matters in the games is what matters most.
Right. And I'm glad he brought this up, because I was wanting to bring it up, but I'm no special athlete. I played high school and I played a little bit in college, but I wanted to bring this up because I was very much a game person. In practice, I couldn't focus nearly as much because I knew it wasn't real. And I mean, you know me well enough. I'm kind of obsessed with reality of a situation. The reality of the situation in practice is there's no win or loss at the end. So it was hard for me to get going the same way. I didn't get adrenaline during practice ever. And I'm an adrenaline junkie who thrives off adrenaline. When I get adrenaline, my brain focuses to a higher degree and I get into a certain zone. It was hard for me to get that in practice. And in games, it came super easily. There are players in the NFL and in all sports that are also that way. And like you said, it's up to the coach to figure out those people. Who are the people that when they're in practice, they're not quite as laser focused. They don't quite get into it, get into a zone, get adrenaline. You can tell the people that are going through the motions and the people that have true adrenaline in practice. And it's important to still give them an opportunity. I mean, if they're terrible in practice, that's a different thing. But it's up to the coach to determine, are they really bad right now just because they're not quite full speed, I guess you could say, or are they just bad player? That's one of the difficulties of coaching at all levels. And if it's somebody that you think, well, maybe there's untapped potential here and they're just struggling to get to it in practice, that's who you give that 1, 2, 3 plays to see what happens, see if there's a different gear there once it's a real game where things actually matter.
And I totally get that. I was always the opposite. And again, like you said, this is just me, amateur athlete, whatever. I got up for everything. Games, practice, I was all about it. Especially because I was a guy, shocking, as you know, not the best athlete, not the worst, didn't embarrass myself, but never like, the best guy. So practice for me was just like a game because like I was just geeked up just to participate, frankly. So I was one of those guys that liked both. And there's no indication, by the way, that like Jacob Cowing is loafing in practice too. Like I've never heard any.
We have no idea. Nobody knows because Shanahan doesn't show anything. Doesn't
Well,
allow anything.
he kicks them all out. He was pretty coy in his press conference yesterday about Christian McCaffrey, about everybody, really. But you know what the one thing I noticed was? He made a couple of jokes. And if there's one thing I feel like I've noticed with Kyle, he don't joke unless he feels really damn good about the team. Like, I just think that shows a level of comfort with him. Like he knows, like, all right, Christian's coming back. I've been in the lab. I've figured some stuff out, like I always do during the bye week, which is why Kyle Shanahan has won 70% of his games after the bye. Maybe that was the clue that he's just, he's ready. He's got that kind of good vibes only for the second half.
One can hope, because I would gladly stop being as much of a negative Nancy, wet blanket, whatever you want to call it, on the team's hopes this season. If they go out and they get a couple of blowout wins, then my tune's going to change a little bit because you got to reassess the situation. And all right, this team finally found themselves in the bye week. I hope for that. I just am somebody that until I see it, I'm not going to believe it.
This is not 49ers related, or it's not 49ers news, but it's tangentially related to the 49ers. And I'm just throwing this out there because I know it's going to bug a bunch of people. So I'll throw that hand grenade into the pile. Dak Prescott has a partially torn hamstring. He's going to be on injured reserve. He's not going to play. It's not out of the realm of possibility that Trey Lance actually gets into a regular season game for the Dallas Cowboys. And I got to say, if I was a Cowboys fan, I play Lance no matter what, because number one, you gave up a 4th round pick to get him and you've never seen him play in a regular season game. But number two, if he loses, so what? You get the draft pick. You're not going anywhere this season, Dallas Cowboys. You're not winning the Super Bowl. So to me, there's no reason not to play Trey Lance because you win either way. Either he's good and you found something, or he stinks and he helps you get a better draft pick.
I mean, you got lots to gain here. Let's say that he's terrible. Okay, you just move on. Who cares? It's not like Cooper Rush is anything other than a backup. Cooper Rush is a decent backup, and that's all. He's nothing else. He's nothing to write home about. He's somebody that's not going to make huge mistakes, and he's somebody that's not going to make huge plays. He's just a kind of like a nothing burger, which is a lot when you're a backup, because there's a lot of backups that are much worse than that. But if you play Trey Lance and he gets 5 games and he looks really, really good for some reason, which at this point, I doubt that. But if he came out and he's killing it, then you keep playing him. And guess what? You have 2 choices. Either you hit the offseason and you control him and you can try to get a draft pick for him by threatening the franchise if he's so good that teams are willing to come pay him. Or if he's so good, you say, all right, we'll give you an incentive-laden deal that's a lot cheaper than Dak, and we're going to trade Dak. Because at this point, you might be hitting that point with Dak. He has not been looking good. He has consistently been getting injured at this point. So if I'm Dallas, I'm looking at it as we probably need to do kind of a quick rebuild, especially kind of offensively. Maybe this is the time while Dak has value that we can go get that 1st round pick for him. Because if we play him again and we pay him, we're not going to be able to get the upgrades we need elsewhere. And if he ends up hurt again, nobody's trading for him. We're not going to be able to get that same value. This seems like this offseason could be the last time that you could get a 1st round pick for Dak. And maybe it's already gone by with this injury, because this is the 3rd year in a row that Dak has had injury issues consistently.
Now, don't forget, Dak just signed a new contract before this year. So if they were to trade him, it would be a massive cap hit. Even a post-June 1st trade is like a $42 million cap hit. A pre-June 1st trade, by the way, just in case you're wondering, is a $103 million cap hit. And he has a no-trade clause, which if they wanted to get rid of him, he might be willing to waive. That's not an absolute deal breaker. I don't think they're trading Dak, but I do think if you're the Cowboys, again, I'm not telling you that Trey Lance is going to be good. I'm saying you win no matter what he does. If you play Cooper Rush and he wins some game, like if he goes 500, what does that do for you? for the Cowboys. He's a 30-year-old quarterback. Like, that does nothing for you. So to me, if I were the Cowboys, that's what I would do. And this is not me saying that Trey Lance is going to be, a stud quarterback. I'm just saying if it was the Niners in that situation, I would want them to do that because I like scenarios where I win no matter what happens. That's pretty much my goal in life, is to put myself in scenarios where no matter what happens, I come out ahead.
Yeah, I think once you know that your season's pretty much over, whether it's just because you're not good enough or in Dallas's situation, injuries, there's a change there that I wish teams did more often. And it's play anybody that has starter potential.
Right.
Unless you're benching somebody that truly is part of your future and is already a starter, you play anybody that has starter potential. You try to figure out who's on this roster that we want to stay on this roster because they're performing. Not, I want this guy to stay on the roster because, maybe he'll be something in the future. No, now you play him to know if he's going to show anything of potential. They are at that point. Cooper Rush, whether he's on your team in the future or not, does not matter. He doesn't move the needle whatsoever. But Trey Lance could potentially, very small chance, be a starting guy that all of a sudden everything comes together and all that athletic talent shows out, and he's the guy that you want to keep around.
At least Kyle Shanahan could be like, hey, I can't put Jacob Cowling out on the field. We're trying to win a damn Super Bowl here, and our team can't afford the mistakes that he might make, right? Cowboys can't say that. That's a totally different situation. Anyway, it's neither here nor there. I just saw that.
We definitely have a new listener in our audience because he says we hate Lance so much. Apparently, he has not been around because you and I were leading the charge to play Trey Lance over Jimmy for years.
Oh, boy. No, yeah, I don't know. Thank you for joining for the first time. If you are joining for the first time, give us a like and a subscribe, please. We're live every single weekday. We do a 49ers in 5 show that comes out every morning that has news updates, injury reports, press conference clips, everything you know to be up to date. Give us a chance, please. But yeah, it's we don't hate Trey Lance. That is not the case at all. Even anyone that's been here for a little while definitely knows that. I'm surprised to hear that you don't scoreboard watch, Levin, because I absolutely do. I've got my eye on any possible thing that could help the 49ers. Even last Sunday, I was sitting there hoping the game would go to overtime because I wanted the Bucs to be on the field more and take up more time. Their defense was on the field for like 80 plays or 83 plays, something like that. That's a ton. And if you don't think Kyle Shanahan's not going to take advantage of that this week, you're crazy.
Here's my watching priority until maybe around 5 weeks to go in the season. I mean, it can change depending on, let's say the Niners are 10-0 and the Lions are 10-0. Well, I'm going to suddenly want to watch a lot more Lions because these two teams are going crazy. But my priority is watch the 49ers, watch divisional games, especially if they're playing each other. If it's two division teams, I'm going to watch that game. Watch for fantasy team purposes. If I have a quarterback and a running back in the same game, you better believe I want to watch that game. And then just watch for great matchups. If it's two really good teams, that's going to interest me. That's pretty much my whole priority for watching games until we hit late season. And then it becomes, all right, I'm going to watch the Niners and I'm going to watch every team that has a chance of affecting the 49ers playoff.
You and I watch games very, very differently. I'm just throwing that out there. One more thing about the Niners-Bucks game that I wanted to mention. I saw this from Aaron Schatz. Tampa Bay is 30th in DVOA against tight ends. Feed 85, Kyle. Let George Kittle eat. He has been kicking ass this year, and there's absolutely no reason for that to stop. It's okay if Kittle is your number one featured wideout. It doesn't have to be Deebo. It doesn't have to be a wide receiver. It doesn't have to be Christian McCaffrey. Be a great way to ease McCaffrey back in. Throw it to Kittle a bunch and use McCaffrey, sparingly. I hope they do. I am on the George Kittle train, man. I've been saying for years that they need to feature him as a wide receiver more. Don't do the thing that Levin said. Don't get intimidated if they stack the box and use him as a blocker. Who cares? Use him as a receiver.
I hope that this is a real thing because I'm just completely making it up, but it does sound like something George Kittle would do. But when he's forgotten about, goes an entire quarter without a target, I wish he would goes to the sideline and finds Kyle and finds Purdy and says 85, still alive. That phrase, Johnny Five, still alive from the 80s movie. Like, use that to be like, hey, yeah, I still exist. Give me the dang ball.
Yeah, that is the weird thing about the 49ers is I feel like most of the time, even though they have guys that are absolute monsters, they don't have guys that are like, give me the ball. I know that
Deebo's the only one, yeah.
Yeah, and like sometimes he does it. But I don't know. I'm surprised that they don't have. I do think that they could use a little of that because every time I see that clip of Deebo against the Cowboys where they get the ball and Deebo looks at Kyle and he's like, hey, Kyle, it's time. And Kyle's like, great. And he gives him the ball and they score the touchdown. And Deebo says, I told you, Kyle. And he says to Deebo, thanks for telling me. Like he wanted to hear that feedback. So I'm surprised that more guys are not going to him being like, hey, give me the ball.
To be fair, we don't know that for sure.
I guess he could be ignoring it. But like when he said,
no, I mean, to be fair, guys could be doing that, but they're not as dramatic as Deebo and they're not mic'd up for it.
True. That's possible. Because
maybe that's why Juice gets a screen a game.
Oh, God. I love that comment that we had up there from Andre. Kyle will throw it to Juice more than he will to Kittle. I mean,
have we had a Kittle screen?
Yeah. Well, he had a touchdown on a screen pass a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Tanisha says Mahomes and Kelsey do it all the time. Yeah, I mean, we saw Kelsey against the Niners in the Super Bowl go to Andy Reid and scream in his face. Like,
yeah,
that's, You
want to talk about cliffs. Kelsey's teetering on it.
What are you talking
how
about?
much Kansas City you have watched this year?
He just had 14 catches.
Yeah. He finally broke out. He's had a bad season up until it.
Yeah.
And he has made mistakes, fumbles. He fumbled in that game, by the way. Like he has not been the same Kelsey this year. He's a lot slower all of a sudden.
He's 35 years old. I think I saw a stat where like this is like the cliff for tight ends. Like there have not been a lot of tight ends that are his age that put up like anything. It's scary.
Basically Tony Gonzalez, and that's about it. Because even by that age, Antonio Gates, Antonio Gates played until 38, 39, but he was like a 35, 40 catch guy by the time he was that age.
Yeah, and Tony Gonzalez too was a maniacal preparer. Like Tony Gonzalez would micromanage every tiny little morsel of food that he put into his body, and was like that for years. It wasn't like, oh, he started once he turned 32. Like he was always very maniacal like that, and that's why he was able to produce at 35, 36, 37.
Yeah, he's the Jerry Rice of tight ends.
Yes, from that perspective. Yes.
He's crazy route runner who fine-tuned every last little thing he could fine-tune.
I always liked Tony Gonzalez. Damn good player. Never got a Super Bowl ring, unfortunately. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the show. And that's going to do it for us this week. We launched our NFL show this week on Monday, which was very exciting. But you are not going to be around for the instant reaction show on Sunday.
Yeah, I got to work. I'll be home probably like half an hour after you sign off because I work until 6 p.m. Eastern, which means I'll be home at about 6:30, 6:35 Eastern. And the game's going to end at 4. You're going to probably be on until 5:30 at some point.
Yeah, I would imagine that's probably right.
It's very frustrating to me on games like this. It's like, one, why do you have an early game? You're on the West Coast. You shouldn't have an early game. 2, could I just get off work 1 hour earlier?
Right. Selfishly, I'm not going to lie. I like the early game, man. Those late night primetime games are killing me.
I thought you were going to go somewhere else with that.
Oh.
So I thought you were going to say selfishly, I like getting the super chat money myself.
Right. If I do the instant reaction by myself, I get to keep the super chat money. But no, I was just going to say, like, just from a sleep perspective.
Yeah, the late ones are rough.
Because here's the thing: no matter what time the game ends, I still got to wake up at 6:30 to get my kids ready to go to school. So
yeah, and on days that I work daylights during, say, Sunday Night Football, if I'm working Monday or Monday Night Football and I'm working Tuesday on daylight shift, I get up at 4 a.m. and we're usually not done till like 1:30.
Yeah, I'm too old to be messing with my sleep that much. But hey, we do what the job requires, right? Anyway, that's going to do it for the show. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for all the comments and the super chats. We really appreciate it. Again, give us a like and a subscribe. I promise if you just give us a chance, we will earn your time. Just give us the opportunity to
Get
do
us
it.
to 15K.
That's right. We want to get to 15K subscribers on YouTube. We're crawling there. We can get there more quickly. Tell a friend. We're almost at 14,000. We want to get to 15. Please help us out there. And we would greatly, greatly appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your, what is it, Thursday today? Yes. Try to enjoy the rest of your Thursday today. And we'll talk to you tomorrow.